The cameras flashed. The reality TV cameras powered down. The party was officially over. And just like that, Hollywood and the internet had this brand new obsession. But this time, it wasn't a scandal. It was a fight for survival in a hospital bed.
Yeah, a very real fight.
Welcome to Starscope Report. Join Jordan and Jamie as they uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
And, this deep dive is completely dedicated to a story that, well, it started as celebrity gossip, right? But it rapidly evolved into this terrifying, incredibly raw mirror for millions of fans.
Totally. We're looking at how reality icon Nicole "Snooki" Polizzi completely broke down after undergoing a hysterectomy. And this was following a terrifying cervical cancer diagnosis.
It's the moment the larger-than-life persona just fades, and you're left with a very real, very terrified human being facing the unknown.
Exactly. So today, for you listening, we are taking celebrity news reports, raw podcast audio, and stacking it all up against a brand new, frankly shocking medical study that just dropped.
I mean, that study really exposed a massive blind spot in women's healthcare.
It did. Our mission today is to unpack the 4-year timeline of her secret diagnosis, the gritty, unglamorous reality of her surgery, and the scientific data revealing the hidden psychological toll this exact procedure takes on women, long after they leave the hospital.
It's a narrative that forces us to look at the intersection of, pop culture invincibility and fragile human biology. You don't expect the woman famous for fist pumping to become the face of a radical surgical recovery.
No, you really don't. But we have to start with the timeline, because the boldest revelation here isn't just the cancer itself, it's the fact that for 4 years there was a ticking time bomb hiding right behind those reality TV smiles.
4 whole years. That's a long time to carry that.
It's wild. Based on the reports, Snooki had actually known about precancerous cells dysplasia and abnormal pap smears since roughly 2022.
Yeah, and 4 years of carrying that knowledge is just an immense psychological burden. When a doctor flags an abnormal pap smear, it's essentially your body's early warning system screaming at you.
Right.
The medical community completely relies on these screenings to catch cellular changes at that dysplasia stage, long before the cells mutate enough to be classified as malignant.
But she didn't aggressively pursue treatment when those alarms first went off. And, before anyone jumps to harsh judgment about a celebrity with endless resources just ignoring her health, she was incredibly candid about why.
She really was.
She admitted she was utterly terrified of the pain and the stress.
Yeah.
She even used this relatable deflection on social media, joking that she's a Sagittarius and just, doesn't deal well with heavy, scary stuff.
I mean, it's easy to judge a celebrity for putting off a doctor's visit, but isn't that medical avoidance incredibly common when we are just terrified of the answer?
Oh, absolutely.
In behavioral psychology, this is a textbook example of the ostrich effect. You literally bury your head in the sand because of this flawed protective logic. If I don't go to the doctor to confirm it, it's not actually happening.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. And for a public figure whose entire brand, her literal livelihood, is built on being energetic and invincible, admitting a vulnerability feels like a threat to her very identity.
That makes a lot of sense. But there's this medical layer to this that makes the 4-year delay even more frustrating. The health reports indicate she was unvaccinated against HPV.
The human papillomavirus.
Right. And the data is undeniable. HPV is the primary cause of roughly 99% of these cervical cancer cases.
And that is the tragedy of this specific type of cancer, right? It is overwhelmingly preventable. A virus like HPV doesn't just show up and cause cancer over a weekend. It's this remarkably slow, silent hijacker.
It takes years.
Literally years. It enters the cervical cells and rewrites their DNA slowly, turning healthy tissue into that dysplasia she was warned about back in 2022.
And vaccines like Gardasil 9 offer, 90 to 100% protection?
Spot on. 90 to 100% protection against the most dangerous strains if administered before exposure. By missing the vaccine, the door was left open, and by delaying the follow-up care, the virus was given the time it needed to complete that cellular hijacking.
Wow. And the hijacking was finally confirmed in January 2026. A colposcopy and a cone biopsy brought her worst fear right into the light. She was officially diagnosed with stage 1 cervical cancer.
The reality check nobody wants.
Yeah. The pathology report called it adenocarcinoma, FIGO IA2. Now, Parsing through all that medical jargon, my understanding is that FIGO-IA2 means the cancer was microscopic, like the invasion was less than 3 millimeters deep.
You're completely right on the measurements. But let's look at what a cone biopsy actually does. The surgeon physically removes this cone-shaped wedge of tissue from the cervix to see exactly how deep the abnormal cells have tunneled.
Okay, so they're checking the edges.
Exactly. Finding clear margins, in her case, meant they successfully got the outer edges of the tumor out cleanly. The cancer hadn't spread to the lymph nodes or, distant organs. Physically, that is the best-case scenario.
Best case scenario, medically, maybe, but psychologically, hearing the word cancer drops like an absolute bomb. She went on Good Morning America and showed this incredibly raw vulnerability.
Yeah, that interview was intense.
Very. She admitted that right after she got the news, she was sitting in her car, hysterically crying. And her mind didn't even go to the physical pain of cancer. It went straight to logistics. She realized she hadn't prepared a will for her husband, Gioni, and their 3 kids.
And that is the sobering reality of a young mother facing a severe diagnosis. You instantly bypass your own mortality and go straight into crisis management for the people you leave behind. The illusion of time just evaporates.
It sent a shockwave through her entire circle, too. Her Jersey Shore castmates were apparently freaking out. I mean, they've had this running joke for over a decade that they were all going to film the show together until they were literally living in a nursing home.
Right, the invincible party kids?
Exactly. Suddenly, that presumed longevity was shattered. Mortality crashed the party.
When one person in a tight-knit group gets a diagnosis like this, it acts as a memento mori for everyone else. It forces an entire group of people who still view themselves as the wild kids of reality television to confront the frailty of, middle age.
And that's not even the wildest part. Wait till you hear exactly what happened when she finally made it through the operating room doors. Because the countdown to a life-changing surgery and the breakdown no one expected is intense.
The transition from the anticipation of surgery to the actual sterile environment is where all those psychological defense mechanisms finally break down.
We can actually see that breakdown happening in real time. Just look at her mindset in July, heading into the surgery date. On her podcast, It's Happening with Snooki and Joey, she talked about needing to just bed rot for a weekend because of the stress.
Yeah, crashing out, I think she called it.
Right. And taking Z-biotics, that pre-drink shot to prevent hangovers, to just keep going, laughing about Joey's wild stories at the Ludlow house.
Yeah.
The contrast between that public persona and her private reality is jarring.
She was heavily compartmentalizing. You can keep the podcast banter going, you can joke about hangovers, but you cannot outrun the calendar.
Nope.
Eventually, the reality of the hospital gown, the blinding surgical lights, the IV needle, it shatters that crafted persona.
And it completely shattered right before she went under. According to her, the moments before the operation were harrowing. As they wheeled her toward the operating room, she got the shakes, her heart started racing, she started hysterically bawling.
Confronting the permanent physical removal of major organs will do that to a person. We need to talk about the sheer scale of the surgery she was facing. A radical hysterectomy is not a minor outpatient procedure.
No, it's a massive demolition and reconstruction. They went in via a C-section, cut a major horizontal incision across her abdomen. The surgeons removed her uterus, her cervix, her fallopian tubes, and the upper part of her vagina.
They are essentially clearing out the entire central reproductive system.
Which sounds terrifying.
It is. The goal is to create a wide physical buffer zone to ensure absolutely no microscopic cancer cells are left behind to, seed a new tumor. But the physiological toll of creating that void inside the pelvic cavity is immense.
Yet amidst all that removal, there was this fascinating medical twist. They specifically left her ovaries intact. Reading through the medical literature, this was a calculated move to prevent her from immediately plunging into surgical premenopause.
And that is a crucial detail for her quality of life. If they had taken the ovaries, her body would have experienced an instantaneous, catastrophic drop in estrogen and progesterone.
Like going through menopause in a single day.
Exactly. Natural menopause happens over years, allowing the body to adjust. Surgical menopause happens in an hour. By sparing those 2 small organs, they saved her from severe hot flashes, mood destabilization, and accelerated bone density loss, all on top of the cancer recovery.
Which is a huge relief. But as if that wasn't enough trauma for one body, while the surgeon was in there, they performed an abdominal repair. After 3 pregnancies, Snooki suffered from diastasis recti, which is where the abdominal muscles literally split apart down the middle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the surgeon physically knitted those muscles back together.
Think about the dual pain of that recovery. The structural foundation of her core, the muscles you use to cough, to laugh, to simply sit up in bed, was being violently tightened and repaired at the exact same time they were suturing the deep internal void where her uterus used to be. Every single movement would be agonizing.
It's almost like repairing a car's chassis while simultaneously removing the engine out of the center. Just intense. But even facing that kind of pain, her competitive reality TV spirit made an appearance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she actually bragged to her fans that she proudly counted all the way to 10 for the anesthesiologist before passing out, noting that most people only make it to 3.
That is a brilliant flash of her true personality shining through the terror. Even while being pumped full of sedatives, she's trying to win the countdown.
Right. But the aftermath wasn't about winning. It was incredibly raw. We saw a stark cultural shift in her post-surgery TikToks, filmed straight from her hospital bed.
I saw those.
She isn't posting a perfectly lit, PR-managed photo looking flawlessly rested. She's lying there with a heating pad strapped to her stomach, a fan blowing directly on her face, eating curly fries with ketchup. She's tearful, unfiltered, and admitting to millions of people, "I'm struggling. I'm not good with pain."
That rejection of the polished Hollywood recovery is profoundly important. Society often expects women to undergo massive gynecological surgeries and just quietly bounce back, as if they merely had a tooth pulled.
Exactly. Just get over it.
Right. But by showing the unglamorous, painful, tear-filled reality of a radical hysterectomy, she validated the silent suffering of countless women who have gone through the exact same thing.
And the public reaction proved how hungry people are for that honesty. The outpouring of support was massive. Meghan Trainor jumped into the comments calling her a supermom, and her old castmate Sammy's sweetheart Giancola sent public love, calling her a badass.
It rallied people around her vulnerability instead of her invincibility. It really bridged the gap between celebrity and humanity.
Definitely. And hey, if you're loving these Hollywood twists and real-world impacts, make sure you're subscribed. We've got even crazier stories ahead. Because later in the deep dive, we'll talk about a shocking scientific twist nobody saw coming regarding life after a hysterectomy.
Because the physical recovery we saw on TikTok is really only half the battle.
Right. The physical cancer might be gone, but the silent psychological struggle is just beginning. To set the stage for this data, let's look at something deeply poignant Snooki told Good Morning America. Even though she is 38 years old, has 3 beautiful children, and was entirely done expanding her family, she admitted that losing the physical, biological ability to have more children triggered a profound sadness.
Yeah.
She said, quote, "It made me feel like I'm not a mom."
Logically, that statement contradicts her reality. She has a bustling house full of kids. But psychologically, it speaks to the incredibly deep, often subconscious ties between a woman's anatomical potential and her identity.
And her feeling of losing that identity is entirely validated by the science. We are looking at a staggering piece of medical literature published just recently in December 2024 in the Medical Forum Monthly.
Okay, let's get into this study.
Researchers at Saidu Teaching Hospital assessed 180 women who had recently undergone hysterectomies. Out of those 180 women, 60% were categorized as depressed, with a mean Beck Depression Inventory score of 10.6.
For listeners unfamiliar with clinical psychometrics, the Beck Depression Inventory isn't just a survey asking if you feel a little blue today.
Right, it's serious.
Exactly. It measures pervasive, debilitating symptoms. A mean score above 10 indicates significant clinical depression, meaning issues with sleep disruption, a total loss of pleasure, cognitive fog, and pervasive feelings of worthlessness. We are talking about well over half of these patients actively struggling to function after their physical illness was supposedly fixed.
But the data points that drill down into the why are what literally stopped me in my tracks. Yeah. The study found that the physical type of surgery, whether it was a massive abdominal cut like Snooki had or a less invasive vaginal hysterectomy, made absolutely no statistical difference in the rates of depression. The size of the scar didn't matter. What dictated the depression was age and parity, meaning the number of children the woman had.
This perfectly isolates the psychological trauma from the physical trauma. The grief isn't about the surgical method. It's about what the surgery represents.
We always focus on surviving the physical aspect of cancer, but this data suggests the psychological amputation is just as severe. because the numbers are absolute. 100% of the women in the study aged 18 to 40 were depressed,
Wow.
not 90%, a full 100%. Furthermore, 100% of the women with 0 children were depressed. In stark contrast, 0% of the women aged 41 to 50 were depressed, and women who already had 3 to 5 children were not depressed at all. Why is age such an absolute 100% predicting factor for depression here? How is a statistical absolute like that even possible in a psychological study?
You see a 100% rate when you have a sudden, violent collision between biological reality and cultural conditioning. For women under 40, their identity in almost every global culture is intrinsically linked to youth, fertility, and the biological potential to create life.
The potential, right?
Exactly. Even if a woman is 38, like Snooki, and consciously decides her family is complete, having the choice permanently, surgically removed, triggers an overwhelming grief. It is a premature, forced eviction from a physiological era of her life.
It's the stark difference between choosing to lock a door yourself and having someone rip the door off its hinges and brick the entryway over. The agency is completely stolen.
Exactly that. For the women aged 41 to 50 in the study who showed a 0% depression rate, they were likely already transitioning into perimenopause or menopause naturally. The surgery wasn't robbing them of their youth or their fertility in an abrupt, violent way. It was likely just relieving them of chronic pain, fibroids, or disease.
So they gain quality of life.
Exactly. But for the younger demographic, the hysterectomy feels like an overnight amputation of their womanhood.
Which perfectly explains Snooki's quote about feeling like not a mom despite her 3 kids waiting for her at home. Her brain is grieving the biological capacity, not the reality of her daily parenting.
And this brings the entire story full circle to the absolute necessity of preventative care. Getting a pap smear, catching precancerous dysplasia early, or getting the HPV vaccine isn't just about saving your life from a fatal tumor.
Right.
It's about saving yourself from these life-altering, identity-shifting surgeries that carry a guaranteed risk of clinical depression for younger women. Preserving your psychological agency is just as vital as preserving your physical health.
That is the ultimate takeaway here. You're not just avoiding a physical illness. You are protecting your mental landscape from a trauma that affects every single young woman who faces it. Snooki's journey from putting off a doctor's visit out of relatable fear to the harrowing anxiety outside the OR and finally to a tear-filled curly-fry eating recovery on TikTok is serving as a massive wake-up call for women everywhere to stop avoiding preventative health.
She took a deeply personal health crisis and, by refusing to hide the ugly, painful parts of the process, turned it into one of the most impactful public health messages of the year. The raw honesty breaks the isolation for that 60% of women suffering in silence.
Which leaves us with a highly provocative thought for you to ponder. If a reality TV star's raw, unfiltered TikTok from a hospital bed, eating curly fries and crying in pain can drive more young women to get screened than traditional sterile public health campaigns, maybe the future of medical advocacy isn't in doctors' brochures.
That's a fascinating point.
Right. Maybe it lies in the radical vulnerability of our pop culture icons. What other societal taboos could we finally break if more stars showed us their real scars?
It really forces us to rethink how we communicate about healing. When the illusion of perfection is finally dropped, the real conversation can begin.
You've been listening to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.